Disclaimer: the views expressed on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek are solely the opinions of the host and the guest. The content of the conversation is not reflective of the institutions or establishments mentioned therein. Take all these opinions with a pinch of salt and a dash of lime if needed. Namaskara, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening whenever you're watching or listening, and welcome to this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. My guest this week is Aditi Verma. Aditi and I have now known each other for about 3+ years, and we met each other at UCO through being a part of the Indian Student Association and much more. In this episode, we generally just spoke about life from our perspectives. For me, as someone moving from India to the United States about 4 years back, and from her perspective of having moved or having lived here and being brought up here by a family who moved here um, from India. So there's definitely a lot that we ponder on in this episode and a lot of deep places that we go into. But I'm sure that there's a lot that you can relate to from everything that we've discussed and talked about on this episode. So without further ado, I present to you Aditi Verma on this episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Yeah, Aditi, how's it going?
Hey, Prateek, it's going pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm
Great.
doing good.
That's great.
Before we get started, if you could let everybody know who you are, what you do, what you would like to do in the future, anything and everything you're comfortable sharing.
Hey, hi guys. My name is Aditi. I am a senior at UCO. I'm majoring in biology. I'm not sure exactly what my plans are after getting my bachelor's in biology, but I'm kind of just going with the flow and we'll see where it takes me. But yeah, that's basically it. Just a little bit about me.
Cool. Let's get right into it. Maybe this is a little deep to start off, but we can, I guess, take it from there itself. You said something about not being sure of what you want to do, and I think that's okay. Because we're never sure about what we want to do and what we don't want to do.
hmm
But have you, or do you feel like there's an internal sense of fear of not knowing what you want to do?
I definitely think there is because, sometimes I catch myself getting like upset or something, knowing that like all my friends and classmates have moved on and like, they're doing the best they can. I'm really happy for them, but I feel like, because of my own self, I'm kind of left behind because I'm like still finishing up and I'm just like, I still don't know what I want to do. And like people are out here starting a whole new life and I'm just kind of, but then I have to remind myself, everything happens for a reason. Everyone has their own timeline on things and, just to calm myself down a little.
Hmm. Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Because I do think that it's very easy, especially with the way that the world is, to sort of be
Mhm.
afraid of um, what's to come and all that sort of adulting stuff, I guess.
Mhm.
But sort of speaking about being in college and sort of making that transition, what are some things you think that have helped you as a person being in college that you can take forward after graduating?
I definitely think being more outgoing because whenever I first started UCO college, I was really shy and I didn't meet that many people. But eventually, I started meeting more people. I started to socialize more and be more outgoing, and that helped me a lot, like with my people skills too. Because I used to be really shy. I would be nervous to talk to just anyone. I wouldn't do that. But eventually, after I broke out of my shell, I was able to do that, and it helped me meet so many other people, so many new people, and just make the best friendships I could. And I think that's going to help me a lot in the future. Yeah.
Hmm, for sure. Um, maybe this is a weird question to ask, or maybe it's not. I don't know. You tell me. But what? And maybe this probably needs a lot of thought, but um, and we can sort of discover it as we sort of figure it out as we talk. But what do you think is important, or not what do you think, but why do you think it's important for us to be able to like communicate with people? Because it's something that people tend to harp on about, but we don't necessarily realize until we're actually in that situation sometimes. So yeah,
Yeah.
why do you think being outgoing is important in some way? And like by being outgoing, I don't mean sharing every single second of your life, but
Yeah.
just
I
being
feel
able
like
to
there's a lot
communicate
of
with people.
answers to
Yeah,
that because, there's no wrong answer for this. Yeah. But I mean, I feel like, especially where we're at in our point of life, we're like starting like job,
yeah.
meeting people and like starting a career and meeting like new people, like loved ones, relationships and stuff. I think communication is really important because it's kind of like gonna help us with all that. If that makes any sense, you know what I mean? Like, I think communication's key. I always have told myself that, and I always tell other people that whenever I get a chance, But without communication, you're just gonna tend to like overthink or just like not understand the situation, and it's better to communicate and like, yeah. Sorry, I don't know if that's making any sense.
No, that does make sense. That does make sense because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's sort of like one of the major things that keeps the ball rolling, right? In terms of
Hmm.
everyday life, because we, as much as we also need some moment of solitude, we also need people around us to be able to talk to and all that sort of stuff. So all of that is also really, I
Yeah.
guess, a part of just what communication means to everybody
Hmm.
in like everyday life. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
because yeah, like it can definitely get lonely if you're in your own sort of cocoon and sort of being shy.
I
And I mean,
agree.
we all
Yeah.
have our phases and our reasons for why we are. Yeah. But gradually it's sort of also finding a way to break out of that in many ways. That definitely helps.
It's hard to get there. I feel like to break out of
But
that shell
like,
to be.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. Sorry. No. Go ahead. You're good. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say maybe there's a bit of a lag. That's why there's a bit of a delay. But yeah, you were saying something about like breaking out. So yeah, you can continue.
I feel like no, you're good, but I feel like, whenever you're like more like antisocial and stuff and you're not really like good at communicating, it takes time to break out of that shell in order to become like more communicative. It takes time, but it's at the end of the day, it's to better yourself, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. Um, if I was to ask you to sort of summarize, I mean, I guess it's hard for me too, but if I was to ask you to sort of summarize what college has meant to you so far, um, how would you put it?
Oh, wow. Okay. I think college for me, looking at it in both like an educational and like a personal way, like I feel like it's just it's been like a roller coaster for me. I feel like, like there's been the goods and the bad, but I
Mm,
wouldn't change it for anything. I met a lot of new people, learned a lot of new things, joined a lot of organizations and all that. And I think it has probably been the time of my life, honestly. Like I like it way better than like high school. People still say they miss high school, but I'm just like, no. College was the time of my life. And it still is, because I'm still here.
hmm.
But yeah.
Definitely, definitely, because I think it's also maybe a little more sort of, or maybe it sticks a lot more to us because we're in that time of our lives where these things, I mean, not to say that high school didn't matter, but these things tend to matter a lot more because then we're taking that into becoming like mid to late 20-year-olds from being early 20-year-olds. So
Mhm.
I think that in itself has that transition, and I think that phase of college definitely helps in a lot of ways, in terms of making that switch and learning lessons. Because definitely, I agree with you in a lot of ways in terms of how college like can be in terms of it being a roller coaster. But then you wouldn't change it for anything because you got so much out of it. So I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Um, for someone, I don't know if there's a high schooler listening to this, but if there is a high schooler listening to this who's sort of intimidated by the sort of thought of college, what is something that you would tell them?
Uh, hmm, that's a good question because I feel like whenever I was a senior in high school, I was terrified to go to college, I really was. But I will say if there is a high schooler watching this out there that, hey, it gets better and this is, like, the next step of your life. It really is. This is where you make lifelong friendships, this is where you might make lifelong connections, and this is where you get your, like, education, your career made and stuff. And I would just say, don't be nervous. It's gonna be okay. Like, it's scary at first, it really is, especially if you're going to, like, a college, like, far, far away, like, whether it be, like, a different state or a couple hours away. It's scary, but it's a decision you wouldn't regret, honestly.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think especially because a lot of the times it feels like you're uprooting your whole life to sort of go to college, because in a lot of ways people have to move away
Yeah.
from family, or people have to sort of live in dorms, or there's many different sort of things that people have to do to be able to go to college, especially because um, I'm sure there's a lot of people from many different parts of the world that are possibly one of the very few people who've been like lucky enough to be able to go to college and all that sort of stuff too. Because um, I guess maybe as Indians we sort of take it for granted, the fact that yeah, every kid goes to college. But I think um, there are some parts of India and even in the United States for that matter where there's actually people who are probably one of the first people in the family to be going to college. Um, So since I made that statement about us as Indians, not everybody, maybe that's a bit of a generalization in many ways. But to ask a generalistic question, do you think that we take something like being able to go to college um, for granted?
I feel like in some situations, yes and no. Like,
Mm,
because I feel like at the end of the day, like, we have a lot more opportunity than other people do, and we should be grateful for that, and sometimes I feel like we tend to take advantage of that and just run with it, and we should just stop and, like, look at it and be like, "Hey, not a lot of people get to do this. We're really lucky to be here," you know? Yeah.
yeah, the reason I say that is because, at least for me, and I feel like for the people around me, at that time I always felt like it was never really a thought of, oh, do I go to college or do I choose to go and make some money for my family or whatever. So I guess from that perspective it sort of makes you think about, oh, like, there's a lot of things that actually go into being able to college, and our sort of upbringings in a lot of ways have helped support that. um And speaking of which, like, what again? This is probably very. I mean, almost every question I've asked so far has been quite loaded. But um, what do you think? Again, now from being in the United States, but of Indian upbringing, what do you think is like a major difference between the two? And what is it that makes both of them thrive in their own way? If that makes sense.
Are you meaning, like, compared to, like, being brought up in India?
Not necessarily, but what I mean is like from family to family. Like a kid, say, being brought up in a family that adopts or subscribes to the American culture, whereas a family that subscribes to Indian culture. So, like, what do you think are like the major differences between the two, and what do you think is unique about them that makes them, yeah, that makes them what they are?
I feel like for us, or in my case, like, being brought up here in America, born and raised, and, still having my Indian background, I feel like it's motivated me to work harder just because my parents, they left everything back home just to come here, just to, raise their kids and give us, a good upbringing and good education, everything. To me, it's really important to, like, not disappoint them in the sense that, work hard, get that college degree, get a good job, and all of that. But I also would say that, like, that's it's I feel like that's true for, like, mostly everyone, but I feel like with having, like, parents that are international and, like, that are from India, that were literally born and raised in India, moved here whenever they were, like, in their, like, early 20s with nothing, I feel like it just motivates me a little harder to, like it motivates me to work a little bit harder than, like, others, whereas, like, people who were, like, brought up here and, like, their parents were brought up here, like, they've never heard like, I feel like they might have not ever heard of, like, struggling and stuff in a sense. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Because like, my parents struggled a lot, and a lot of parents that come from internationally and stuff, they have struggled to be where they are now, or at least have their kids where they're at now. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question. I don't know if it does.
No, it does, because I think you make an interesting point there of how, say, the parents' struggle can sort of seep into what you want to do as you grow into becoming an adult.
Mhm.
And I guess it's also sort of, I guess, in a lot of ways, what you said, like you said initially, that it applies to almost everybody. Like, I think both
Mhm.
things apply
Exactly.
for almost everybody, because I am sure that even in India, unfortunately, or even in the world for that matter, I think there are, and good for them, there are families that are able to sort of support their kids in many ways, to which the kids end up taking things for granted, to where they don't necessarily value what they have. And it's all of those sort of things that also sort of seep into, again, sort of making you who you are as you grow up. So it's
Mhm.
just interesting stuff in terms of how, like, the culture within a house can itself really have an impact on you as a person. Because, like you said, like, the fact that that your parents had to struggle to make a life here after moving from India motivates you to sort of work harder and sort of be
Exactly.
responsible and do
Yeah.
do good. Yeah. So, but to sort of flip that on its head a little, do you think that that can be too much of a burden to carry sometimes, as, yeah, just as a person?
Um, hmm. Sometimes, yes, because sometimes I feel like whenever I fail or, like, I do something, like, that wasn't according to plan, I feel like I failed my parents in a way because 'cause I'm just like, like, they were expecting me to do this and that, but here I am disappointing them because, I didn't do something right, so I feel like it is a lot of pressure, but at the same time, I feel like that helps me stay on track and more motivated, So if I do fail, I'm just like, "Okay, you know what? It's okay. Give it another try," and I work harder for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, when you said, like, things can get challenging, I don't know why it reminded me of our cell bio class we took together.
Oh, I don't wanna even talk about that. That was I was, like,
Yeah.
thinking about that earlier today too because with the same professor, she's teaching another course next semester, and I was like, "Never again. Never again."
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess to each their own, because I know people who like the class too. So, maybe it just wasn't for us. But
It definitely
moving
wasn't
away
for
from
us.
that, in terms of, yeah, moving away from that, again, like, maybe these all these questions may seem a little hard hitting. So, to sort of just bring it down a little, um, what is something that you think or maybe, I guess this is not less hard hitting. It's still kind of deep, I guess. But what is something that you think we can learn from our parents' generation? Since you've sort of mentioned how their sort of struggles have motivated us, what do you think is something that we can learn from them to take forward in life?
Okay, wow, I love these deep questions because 'cause they're really making me think. But I think something we can learn from them is, like, the meaning of hard work and, like, responsibility because, I feel like this is, like it's more common for, like, people with like parents who are like from India or like somewhere international and stuff, you know, they came here with nothing like we talked earlier, they worked hard, they built and everything and like put us through school and stuff. I'm sure they have dreams of their own, but they put that aside just to be responsible and like work hard just for their kids, because they knew they had a responsibility to uphold and stuff. So I definitely think like responsibility and like working hard is one. And then like definitely being like sincere and kind. Growing up, my parents, like I told you, like they didn't come from much and stuff, they always taught us to be kind and sincere to everyone and anyone, no matter what the circumstances are and stuff. Even if you're having a bad day, you don't know what the other person's going through. So always just be kind and sincere to everyone. But yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
To sort of maybe transition into more like self-related stuff about becoming adults. Um, not to say that we haven't been talking about that already, but maybe this will maybe get a little more lighter and interesting in many ways. Um, you mentioned something about earlier about communication and how that can help us in our future relationships and all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
So, from your perspective, what is what is it like to sort of know that you're in that phase of life where maybe 4 or 5 years down the road you're looking at yourself possibly getting married? The reason, well, let me give you some context to that. The reason I asked that is because the other day my parents were talking to me about this too. They were like, yo, like, I know you're just 23, but start thinking. I was like, okay. It's I- and I told them, like, I was like, there's not much I've thought about, to be quite honest, but sure, like, I understand where they're coming from. So like, what is your thought on all of that? Like, that the fact that we're in that phase of our lives where, at least, and maybe this is coming solely from an Indian culture, because a lot of the times there is that emphasis on, oh, you need to get married within this period of time, um, for X, Y, and Z and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, like, what is your sort of, well, yeah, what do you feel about that? Like, in terms of the fact that we're in that phase?
It's really scary because, I think me and my parents had that conversation like not too long ago. And it's really scary because it's like time flew by because yesterday I felt like I was just turning like 19. And now it's like all of a sudden my parents are over here talking to me about marriage and stuff. And it is scary. And it's like, it almost seems like most Indian parents, specifically like, it's probably everyone, but specifically Indian parents, like they have like a certain timeline mapped out for us. You know what I mean? In the sense that like they're like graduate, work a couple years, then get married, settle down, have kids, all that. And it's like that's really scary. Like I don't even know what I want to do after like I graduate and stuff, and to think about something like this is just really nerve wracking and scary and stuff. So yeah, that's really scary.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think, it's sort of like, I can't, like, it's sort of like that statement, right? Of like, I can't even take care of myself. How will I take care of another person? And like
Exactly.
another, like another person added on top of that.
Exactly.
So, that definitely adds on to that sort of sentiment of feeling scared about what's to come. But then I
Mhm.
guess even our parents probably didn't have it figured out until they actually got into the situation, right?
Oh,
Don't you
definitely
think?
not. Definitely not. Yeah, they didn't know what they were getting themselves into, and they were probably young. My parents at least were younger than me when they got married. So for like them it was way worse, but for me to even think about that, I'm just kind of like I'm like focused on school right now. I don't even want to think about that just yet, but I turned 24 in like 3 or 4 months, so like who knows? I'm kidding.
Yeah, definitely. Because like you, I guess my mom, my dad was off about age, but my mom was a little younger when she got married too. So we were talking about this the other day about how, yeah, like you said, time definitely flies. Here you were, uh, just turning 18, sort of becoming an adult in, I guess, the
Yeah.
legal sense. And now to we're reaching a point where you're like, oh, I should be thinking about making money, saving money, investing, um, etc., etc., etc. Um,
Yeah.
do you think
It's just
that
a lot.
burden? And I mean, we probably, yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just said, "Yeah, it's just a lot." Sorry, I think I'm lagging again.
No, it's all good. Yeah, yeah. It definitely is a lot. It definitely is a lot because it's just a lot to process, I guess. But maybe this is gonna come from just our perspective
Mm.
because we're Indian, but or of Indian heritage. But what do you think is, or not? What do you think? But do you think that it's that additional burden that's just added on that maybe Asian cultures have some similarities to us, other Asian cultures, excuse me, have some similarities to the way that our parents might view the way that we should sort of trace our future path. But do you think that that's slightly different in the way that now that you've sort of seen how people over here live, um, or that you've been seeing that, excuse me, for all your life? Um, yeah, what is your sort of take on that difference?
I feel like with most parents, at least Asian parents, it's like the same. They have a timeline mapped out, and they're like, "This is how you should do things." This is the timeline you should do it on. And like looking at things from an American perspective, I feel like it's more like there's no timeline for anything. It'll happen when it happens. It takes its time. Everyone has their own path and whatever. So, I mean, basically, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, definitely sort of helps to, I guess, be more relaxed about it, maybe. In the sense that, not to say that we shouldn't think about it, because it does probably matter. I mean, it does matter, not that it probably, but it does matter. But, um, I think sometimes we give it too much thought, um, like we would about what we would do after getting out of college, right? We would give that too much thought. Um, So do you feel like there's, or well, I'm sure there is a lot of overthinking for everybody in many ways, but how do you sort of maybe pull yourself out of a moment where you're like going into this rabbit hole of, oh, like I'll be graduating when I'm 23, 24. I'll probably work till I'm 27. I need to do this by then. I need to do that by then. I need to have so much invested in Bitcoin. I don't know if you're interested in Bitcoin or not. I don't know why I use that example, but yeah, do you feel like, or have you sort of realized moments where you've caught yourself when you were overthinking about those things?
Oh, no, definitely, because I feel like I am a huge overthinker. I tend to overthink things all the time, and it's really hard because it can really get to you, like, mentally and emotionally whenever you think about things and, get really deep about it and stuff. But then, like we mentioned earlier, you just have to remind yourself, like, "Hey, it's okay." Like, at the end of the day, you have to look at it and say, "At least you're still working towards it." That's the end goal still. It hasn't changed. And eventually you'll get it done. Not on like the timeline my parents want or anyone else wants. It'll be on my timeline, which is okay. And yeah, basically it, you can't really let it get to you, like the overthinking and stuff, because it gets really hard and stuff to do things. But I've caught myself like overthinking a lot, and I'm just like, can't focus the whole day, and I just feel like I'm doing nothing, and I'm just like, okay, well, this is not helping me. Like, just overthinking something that hasn't happened yet, like in the future, that's gonna happen in the future. It's not gonna help me to overthink it now. So
Definitely, yeah, yeah. Because I'm sure we all had those moments, and it's sort of you realize through having those moments that you shouldn't be having those moments, or you should be limiting them as much as you can.
exactly,
Interestingly
yeah.
enough, um, yeah. Um, maybe this will probably make it a little lighter. But what do you think is, well, maybe I find it funny in a lot of ways. But again, this is coming from somebody who's never been in a relationship as a youngster. But Do you think that there's something funny about the fact that now even a freaking 10-year-old is looking for a relationship?
I definitely do think it's crazy. It really is. Because when I was 10 years old, I was playing with, like, my stuffed animals and running around outside, you know? And nowadays, you have, like, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, middle schoolers, like, in relationships, looking for love, and, like, I was on Twitter the other day, and I saw, like, a 13-year-old tweeting about how she's never gonna find love, and I'm like, "Girl, what are you doing? Like, this is not the age, where you need to be finding love. This is the age where you play and stuff." It's definitely weird. It really is. It's crazy because it's like it's just so different. Because I'm sure you remember, like, when you were, like, 10, 11, 12, you were, like, just playing with your, like, toys and stuff and just running around outside and never even thought about love. I didn't even know what love was until I was, like, in high school. But
Yeah, same, yeah, same. I remember 10-year-old, when I was a 10-year-old, I was probably just playing cricket outside with friends, never necessarily thinking about, oh, what is love? Like, am I missing out on it and all that sort of stuff? But yeah, I think um, a lot of it is maybe because of this sort of supercharged nature of culture and existence around us. And by culture, I don't mean like sort of our indigenous cultures necessarily, but just a sort of interconnected way of life right now. In
mhm,
many ways, I think that definitely has a lot to do with it. Because then you're also like, oh, that kid is in a relationship. Why am I not in a relationship?
that's
So
crazy.
it's sort of yeah, yeah, definitely it is really in a lot of ways it's definitely stupid if you like if you look at it from one perspective. It may seem stupid, I should say,
Mhm.
but then it can also sort of seem scary in a lot of ways, because then unless these people aren't receiving unless these people receive the right guidance, it might just be something that they take into their lives as they go into high school and like college and all that sort of stuff. um yeah, because I thought it was scary. um so yeah, what is you sort of what do you think of that dynamic of that? Because now we probably feel like ancient people to people who are like 10 or 11 now, in the way that we view dating versus the way that they view dating.
I feel like they know a lot more at the age than I did whenever I was their age. Does that make sense? Like, they probably know everything we know at our age now, and we're 23. And it's just crazy to me because it's like they definitely see dating and stuff like that as like, oh, it's important, oh, we need to do it because they start at a young age, they're like dating at like 10 and stuff. Whereas it's like our mentality is just like, hey, you know, one day everyone will find love. Like, it's not gonna happen on anyone's terms, not gonna happen when I want it, it's not gonna happen when you want it, it's gonna happen whenever it's meant to be. And you don't have to find love to be happy. And I feel like the younger generation doesn't get that. But yeah.
What do you think will help them get that? Is it just experiencing life?
I think really experiencing life and just going through a lot of struggles in the sense that, they are starting at a young age, so it's gonna be more difficult and they are gonna struggle a little bit, as much as I hate to say it, it's gonna happen. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that the struggle that I mean, sure, our struggles are different for different generations, but do you think that the struggle that they will face, like the generation younger to us, is very much severe to the struggle that we will face in terms of be it mental health, growing up, sort of the external stimulus or stimuli, and all that
Yeah,
sort of
that's a good
stuff, like the way that the
question.
world is advancing?
I feel like there's a huge, like, difference between, like, the generations in the sense that, like, us versus, like, a 10 to 12-year-old now, like, they already know what mental health is, and they're, like, only, like, they're so young, like, some kids, like, I see TikTok, like, I'm always on TikTok, I see TikToks and, like, tweets about, like, kids being depressed, and I'm like, "Man, like, when I was your age, like, I didn't have a care in the world, I was not depressed," and I think a lot of that stems from, like, relationships. and like obviously like if they were like, hey, we had to find love at a young age, it's like harder for them to like deal with it. And like mentally, that's not a good place to be. And I feel like the newer generation has to deal with that a lot more than we had to at their age, which is kind of crazy to me because it's like, it didn't hit me until I was in college. I was a much older then. Whereas now like kids are like 10 to 12 and they're just, talking about depression, mental health and all of this. It's crazy. It really is.
Yeah, yeah, definitely is. I mean, not to say
Mhm.
that they can't be depressed, but it's definitely very different, like you said, because
Yeah.
we had no care in the world while we were their age. And
Yeah.
this is what we sort of have heard our parents sort of throw on us too, right? Oh,
Yeah.
for right or wrong reasons. A lot of the times they were like, yeah, like, why are you even worried about this? Like, when I was your age, I would do it this way, but I would do it that way. So now we're kind of turning into that, I guess, as we're talking
Exactly.
about
Yeah.
this. But just since you've sort of mentioned mental health, maybe this is, again, it's just an opinion. And if you're comfortable sharing, that's fine. If you're not, that's fine too. I think we're in an age right now, and I'm gonna try and navigate this as without sounding too um what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to sound too abrasive or brash, excuse me, by saying this, but I think it's very easy to nowadays sort of diagnose yourself as depressed, which I think is very unfortunate in a lot of ways, because then you are unfortunately pulling yourself down. By this, I'm not sort of discrediting the experience that somebody has, because everybody has tough times and they probably might have some other mental health issues that, they're not aware of. But I still think that that can be a little problematic to sort of diagnose yourself as depressed rather than a clinical diagnosis. So, what is your sort of thought or opinion on that as a problem that exists, excuse me, today?
I definitely do think it's really common, like you mentioned, for people to like kind of self-diagnose. And I'm not saying that like, they don't have like the mental issues that they're talking about, like being depressed, etc. But I feel like nowadays it's very easy for like people to just be like, yeah, I'm sad, I'm depressed, and they're just upset over like schools or like a relationship or something like that, and they tend to just immediately think it's depression and stuff. And I won't even lie, I've been there. Like I'm just like, oh yeah, like I feel like I'm like really depressed and stuff. But then I have to like I think about it, I'm like, you know what? There's people that are actually depressed that like have to get help for it and stuff. So I definitely do think that like nowadays people do tend to self-diagnose, and stuff.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. I guess my voice sort of cut out there for a second,
No,
but
you're good.
I was just saying, what do you think can help change that?
Ooh, that's a good question.
I mean,
I
it's
mean,
just an opinion, or
I
I
just
was wondering like what your opinion would be on that.
I think maybe, like, openly talking about your problems, because that has helped me a lot with, like, issues I've dealt with is, like, talking to someone about it and, like, being more upfront about it. Someone that I trust and love and can talk to. And that's helped me a lot mentally and, like, made me happier and stuff, and I feel like that's just like, if someone feels like they're, like, depressed or, like, getting to that stage, they should definitely talk to someone, whether it be, like, a family or friend or even, like, someone like a counselor or a therapist or something. Like, it's okay to, like, talk to someone because it's gonna help you so much more. Like I said earlier, we were talking about it, like communication's key. Like it's okay to talk to someone about it because if you don't, it's just gonna bottle up and it's just eventually gonna make it a lot more worse than it is at the moment.
Definitely, definitely, because I'm sure we've all sort of had our moments of bottling certain emotions up, and then
Mhm.
the bottle just sort of, or the bubble just sort of bursting, if you will, and that leading to a meltdown of its own. But yeah, don't want to sort of end this on a sad note. We're gonna maybe to sort of lift the mood, excuse me, up a little. What do you think is um, funny about the way that, or not funny about the way that, but excuse me, funny about the direction that we're headed to as a world? It's kind of deep, but at the same time, maybe trying to find a lighter side in that deep question, I guess.
In my opinion, I feel like the direction we're heading towards as a like, like the whole world entire, like we're doomed. Like I hate to say it, but I feel like, it's I it's crazy, how like times have changed, generations have changed, like it really is scary. It really is.
So it's not funny, it's just scary.
It's funny too, it just depends on which way you look it at, but it's like the direction we're headed towards, it's not looking so great for us.
Hmm. I mean, I guess I'm sort of digging this up now, but if you don't mind my asking, why do you think that it's doom?
I just feel like with the whole pandemic and stuff, like and the vaccine situation, I'm not getting into that, but I'm just saying like just seeing how like people around the world reacted to that and like how they felt about the whole pandemic and like their thoughts and feelings, like with the whole mask mandates in like different cities and countries, it just really makes me question humanity. It really does. And I know that sounds kind of bad, but it makes me question like people because it's like see, I can't go into it without getting into the COVID discussion to explain it, so I'm just not going to because that's just a lot deeper than this needs to be.
No, I mean, if you want to talk about it, you can talk about it, but if you don't want to
Yeah.
talk about it, that's fine. I am open
Yeah.
to anything.
I feel like it was definitely eye-opening after, like, when the pandemic hit and stuff to see, like, people's, like, thoughts and stuff on, like, coronavirus and stuff like that, and it's just in my opinion, if you had to wear a mask to protect someone else's, like, health and safety, like, you should do it, and, there's people who think differently, which is totally fine, everyone has their own opinion, but I think that really made me think of, like, humanity as a whole and, like, how this world is, like, really, like, changing, and it's crazy, it really is, like, I'm sure you probably might feel the same way about it, but it's, like, it was really eye-opening for me in the sense of, like, seeing, like, how people really are, you know? And with that being said, I feel like that's really, like, what makes me think that the world is, like, headed into, like, a bad direction. It really does.
Gotcha. Gotcha. No, that definitely makes sense. And I think what you just explained can easily be copied and pasted into people's political beliefs or people's beliefs
Mhm.
about a certain sports personality. I don't think maybe it's come out to be a lot more louder because of the current debate that we're having about the
I agree.
situation that we've been in for the past 2 years. Yeah, but it's definitely like control C, control V on almost every situation in the world at the moment. Um, it's
Yeah,
just copy pasted on
yeah.
everything, and you'll
And I
see
think
the
for me,
same
it was
thing,
more
only
eye-opening.
with different sort of circumstances.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. No, you're good. Sorry, I think I'm lagging again. But yeah, like I said, it's that can be applied to like different things, like you said, politics, sports, whatever. But, like for me, like as a person, like that's what really like opened my eyes. And I was just like, wow, like this is how really like, this is how people think, like in my head, like I was kind of like thinking like, there's just like good and bad people, that's it. But then when the pandemic hit, like it really changed my thoughts and like opinions about like humanity overall as a whole.
For sure, for sure. Um, yeah, to sort of taper this off into a more positive outlook, I guess. I'm sure that humanity still exists. I mean, I'm not just saying that. I'm not trying to discredit what you said, because it's definitely something that I
No,
think
no.
about too. In the way that we just react to certain things, it's really unfortunate where we are as people today. But yeah, to sort of maybe put a positive spin on it, I do think that humanity exists in many ways, but unfortunately, everything that we're seeing, or sort of consuming rather, is just negative stuff. Like everything. And again, I don't want to go into the news and all that sort of stuff, because that's a rabbit hole of
Yeah.
its own. Because I've sort of mentioned it before too. Like, I definitely feel like the news tends to play a role in sort of making that feeling of like impending doom a lot more
I
heavier, I
agree.
guess, for the lack of a better word. But yeah, I do think that maybe it's just about us sort of seeing that humanity exists in a lot of ways, and maybe doing our part, like,
No, definitely. I do think we,
because
with humanity, I feel like
go
we
ahead.
do have a chance. It's just like from the stuff that I have been seeing, that's just my opinion. And I see where you're coming from too. Like we're not necessarily doomed, but like it just makes it seem like that with like some of the stuff that have been has been going on for the past year or so.
Definitely, definitely. And no, I definitely sort of sympathize with you in that sense, because I definitely felt that, like, not March, maybe April, May, June of last year. I was like, geez, where are we headed? Like,
Yeah.
especially after the whole George Floyd thing happened, and all
Oh
of
yeah,
that.
that's a good point.
Eh,
Yeah. That too. All that stuff. Like I feel like 2020 really was like just a lot happened, a lot, and it just made people like crazy, I guess. A nice way to put it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think it's not the end yet. I think there's better to come, and I'm
Yeah, we
hopeful, or
definitely
at
still have
least
hope.
I guess we can all hope and sort of do our best, yeah, to make sure that we don't just end this world in that sort of doom of fighting with each other. um,
I agree.
but yeah, on that note, we're going to transition into the word association game called Bish Bash Bosh. um, but yeah,
Okay.
before I sort of explain that, thank you so much for answering all these questions, because I know they were
Of
quite deep,
course.
but
No, of course. Thank you
it's
so
sort
much
of
for
good to have
having
those
me.
perspectives out there.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad I was able to come on the show and like, answer your questions, because it, gave me your like perspective on things too. And it was good. It was good talking about, a good discussion.
Definitely, for sure, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, basically we're gonna head into Bish Bash Bosh, the word association game, where I will give you five different words, one word at a time, and you have to respond to each word in either three other words or three different phrases. So, for example, if I was to say music, what are the three things that sort of come to your mind when I say the word music? Then you would give me, oh, song, dance, Hindi. I don't know,
Okay.
something
Just
like
like
that.
even a song name or
Um,
something, right?
Anything, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Okay.
not going to be music is not the word, but that was just an example.
Hmm.
But yeah, it can be
Okay.
anything that sort of calls out to you as I say
Okay.
it. Um, so yeah, the first word
Okay.
is differences.
People change weather. I don't know where weather came from, but that came to my
Fair
mind.
point. No, I agree 100%. I agree 100%. Excuse me. The second word is nuance.
Say it again.
Nuance, like as in like gray, or that the fact that there is black and white in this, or it's not just black and white, that there is a lot more in this world than what we see.
Ooh, humanity. That's a good one. Clouds and darkness.
Nice. Okay, interesting. I like the word darkness there. Um, the third word is learning.
Mistakes. School. Languages.
Cool. The fourth word is, empathy.
Empathy. Kindness, compassion. Empathy. Kindness, compassion. Okay, let's see. What's another one? Empathy. I guess. I don't really know. Nothing's coming to mind. Empathy. Let me think.
It's okay. It can be anything that's probably just floating in your head right now.
Empathy. Okay. People.
Beautiful. The last word is similarities. What are the three things that sort of call out to you when I say the word similarities?
Similarities. So cultures, culture. Sorry, cultures. Culture. Religion, and I guess I guess I could reuse humanity for this one too. Similarities.
Beautiful. That's a great way to close this off. Thank you so much for playing along
Yeah.
on this segment of Bish Bash Bosh. Just two more questions before we're done.
Okay.
The first one is, how do you relate to people?
How do I relate to people? In what sense do you mean that? Like, just like in general, how do I relate to people? Like,
In no specific sense, yeah, like however you sort of perceive it.
I mean, I think this is where like communication comes back, you know, like I relate to people in the sense that like, I feel like with them it's like communication's key and like being able to relate to someone, you have to have communication and stuff. So yeah.
Definitely. Because I think through having those communications only,
Hmm.
you can sort of realize that there's actually a lot more similar between the person next to you, or between you and the person next to you, I guess,
I
than
agree.
just, assuming, I guess. So definitely. And the last question, which is not really a question, but it's more of a request. So if you could leave us with a positive thought or a positive quote or anything that sort of keeps you going on a day-to-day basis, feel free to share that with everybody who's listening and watching.
I feel like this goes back to like the beginning of the segment again. But some positive words I always like, tell myself to keep myself going throughout the day, throughout the week and stuff would be like, it's okay to do things on your own timeline. Everyone has their own timeline. If you don't do something according to like someone's standards, it's okay. You'll get there eventually. Everyone has their own timeline. That's what I would say.
Beautiful. That's a good thought to close off on, because I think, like we sort of mentioned already, we tend to get carried away by this sort of feeling of, oh, my time is coming
Hmm.
up. While in
I
fact,
agree.
your time in someone else's eyes is probably coming up, but your time in
Hmm.
your life is probably not even started yet. So,
Yeah,
yeah, that's a good note to close off on. Thank you so much, Aditi, for sharing everything that you did. I
no
appreciate you sort
problem.
of being willing to sort of go
No,
into these deep places. I appreciate it.
no problem. Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
For sure, for sure. And for those of you watching and listening, thank you so much. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Thank you for watching this episode of the podcast featuring Aditi Verma. Make sure to mention in the comment section below some things that you found interesting, intriguing, or relatable about this conversation. Make sure to also check the description box below for other sources of information, content, and the other things that I do in terms of writing the newsletter. So make sure to click the link in the description box below to sign up for it and get them straight into your mailbox. Make sure to also like this video, share it around, and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to never miss another episode. And if you've been listening to us for this while, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to just join in on the conversation and just listen out to what people of the world have to say. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and don't forget to keep your mind open to different perspectives, because you never know, random relatability might just be around the corner.